D1Baseball.com joins us in the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team. If you're not subscribed to D1Baseball.com, what are you doing? All of the best information sits right there. They cover college baseball like nobody else. And again, Kendall's with us right now on the Farm Bureau guest line. So, Kendall, let's start in Hattiesburg, actually. Although they played over at Louisiana Tech last weekend, I assume that you came away really impressed with that series win like we did. What did you learn about the Golden Eagles with their time over at Louisiana Tech?
Yeah, I tell you what, man, that was the storyline of the weekend out of Magnolia State. I think when you look at Southern Miss overall, I mean, that is a pitching staff that's certainly been elite throughout the first part of the season. But we all kind of waited, right, to see if the offense would get going. I just had a sneaking suspicion that you're going to kind of an old school CUSA rivalry. That may come, that may kind of break out a little bit, and that's kind of what happened over the weekend. I mean, they scored a lot of runs. They got some guys going. Dalton McIntyre was fantastic over the weekend, I thought, for USM, and so to have that kind of offensive outburst against a La Tech team who had actually pitched and played very well to that point, I thought was ultra impressive by Oz's crew, and now they kind of turn the page and they get ready for even tougher competition in the future. But that was definitely a big step forward. And now you just kind of wonder, starting kind of tonight with Bama, do they start to get in a little bit of a groove offensively? If they do, they're pretty scary.
It's funny looking at Alabama and Southern Miss in the RPI, and I know it's super, super early for RPI, but 20 for Alabama, 23 for Southern Miss. But then you look at the strength of schedule, 12 for Southern Miss, 128 for Alabama. 8 of their 15 wins are quad 4 wins. What is this Alabama team? Are they a team that's going to contend in the SEC this year, or are they a team that's sort of been ballooned up by a week early schedule?
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, they had the weekend in Frisco. They played pretty good competition and did a really nice job. I think the biggest thing when you look at Bama is they've actually got some balance from an offensive standpoint. Obviously, we know about Ben Hess and Alton and guys like that from a pitching standpoint. But when you look at their offense, Justin LeBron's gotten off to a really nice start for them. TJ McCants, kind of a old Ole Miss guy, like he's had a really good year for them, hitting 373, hitting for power, 6 home runs. For the most part, a pretty good eye to play, not a ton of swing and miss, 7 doubles. Then you look at Gage Miller and Bryce Evelyn, and both of those guys have made a huge impact as well. So while they do have some nice pieces on the mound, they've been really good at kind of the core group offensively. And you're right. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me, and it's kind of like the same thing with A&M, right? They looked really good for the most part the weekend they played stiff competition. Now, how do they do once SEC play begins? That's kind of anybody's guess at this point.
How much are we going to be able to take away from Mississippi State and Ole Miss in these first weekend series? State's on a 9-game winning streak. They have the 2 midweek games. If they can win those, that'll be an 11-game winning streak. They're 14-4. And then let's say they get swept by LSU. Should you be down on Mississippi State again, or have you seen enough in the early going to say that team is going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if you're a State fan, I think the biggest thing for me is let's say they get swept by LSU, which I don't think is going to happen. I think they'll get one of those games. But let's say they get swept by LSU. To me, it's more so this early in the season. It's kind of how they win games or how they get swept. And so if it's a series against LSU where they lose 3 one-run games, I think you look back and go, okay, this team has a shot. But if it's one of those things where they don't look competitive in 2 of the games, then I think you have a little bit different scenario. But I actually think they've pitched well enough, and I think they've got enough offensively to scare LSU this weekend. LSU, for the most part, has played at home. Even when they were at Minute Maid, that was a home weekend for them. They had probably 5,000 more fans there than Texas did of all teams. So, they're going on the road for the first time as a true road test. So it's going to be difficult for them. I think Ole Miss for me, I think South Carolina Ole Miss is a sneaky good series this weekend because I think South Carolina, after, the weekend series loss against Clemson, which, by the way, both games by 1 run, I think a lot of people are kind of off the Gamecocks bandwagon, but I think South Carolina views this weekend as really important. And I think Ole Miss, I think this weekend is a statement weekend for them. I think we all kind of see the progress they made over the last couple of weeks. I mean, obviously, well documented, the offense has been way better than it was the first couple of weeks. But now you get South Carolina at home. You have a chance to really change the narrative for Ole Miss. If you win this series, all of a sudden people are kind of around Oxford are thinking a little differently about this team moving forward. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge weekend for both of these teams in terms of just at least tweaking the narrative that has been over the last year to, in State's case, the last 2 years.
How much of Ole Miss's progress do you think can be attributed to schedule, or are they, in fact, playing better baseball the way you would expect a Mike Bianco coached Ole Miss team to play?
Well, I mean, the first 6 games of the year, they weren't hitting the broadside of a barn, and against comparable teams and against better teams in Iowa, I still think Iowa's going to end up being a really good team. I think they just played a really tough schedule early on. They've been able to hit the ball at a pretty high level. So, I'm not out here saying they're going to hit 320 in the SEC as a team, but do I think they're way better than hitting 190 or 200? Absolutely. Do I think they can hit 300, 305 in the SEC? That might be a tall order. But I tell you what, if this team can hit 280, 290, they've got a shot to be a really good club this year.
Looking around the SEC, is there anybody that's disappointed you so far in the non-conference? A team that you thought maybe would be really good that has not looked like that so far?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I don't think they were going to be very good, but I'll tell you what, Missouri is going to have a tough first year under Carrick Jackson. I mean, I really like Carrick, but I mean, they lost 2 out of 3 to IPFW, which most people don't even know what that is. That's Purdue, Fort Wayne. They're a very bad program, and somehow Missouri lost 2 out of 3 of them over the weekend. That's kind of surprising to me. I think the other one for me would probably be Kentucky. I saw Kentucky a few weeks ago at the Round-Up tournament, and I like some of their pieces. Like Ryan Walshman's a really nice player. Emilian Petre's a nice player. I just wonder, do they have enough arms to compete at the highest levels of the SEC? I think this conference race is going to be so fun. Right now, I've got probably 11 or 12 postseason caliber clubs, and we all know on Selection Monday that list is going to have to be about 10 teams. So a lot at stake here over the next 10 or 11 weeks.
You mentioned LSU a few minutes ago, and that's a team, they're still really, really good, and I don't know that they've taken as big a step back as I thought they might. I mean, you lose the first and the second pick in the draft in any sport, and your team should take a step back. But they're still really, really good. What are they bringing to Starkville this weekend? What should you be watching for up here?
Well, I think the biggest thing for Mississippi State is you've got to throw strikes. They're a club that will absolutely torch you if you do not throw strikes. Look back at LeBaron Johnson for Texas. He's one of the better, Friday guys in the country. And what LSU did was his command wasn't pinpoint. They ran his pitch count up to about 90 after about 3 innings. And all of a sudden, Texas was back to square one, and they were in the bullpen on a Friday night. So the biggest thing for State, if they can throw strikes, I like their chances. With that said, if you don't throw strikes, LSU is one of those clubs that'll get a couple of guys on: Paxton Kling, Hayden Travinsky, Tommy White. Those guys will get big hits. On the mound, Luke Holman's a tough assignment on Friday night through the MSU offense. He's one of those guys that doesn't throw 97 like Paul Skeens, but he'll throw 3 strikes or 3 pitches for strikes in every single quadrant of the strike zone. He will not throw very many balls. He'll give you something to hit, but he will not throw very many balls. He is a precision pitcher. And then after that, Gage Jump, a lefty, was up to 97. I saw them a couple weeks ago. And then the guy that, if you're State, you kind of feel the best against is probably Thatcher Hurd. He's got elite stuff, but, he's been a little bit wishy-washy this year. So I think the biggest thing for me is I think LSU's pitching staff as a whole is better. Whereas their offense, again, I think if you can throw strikes against them and not give them free passes, I think you can kind of limit the damage that the Tommies and the Hayden Travinskys of the world can do against you, and of course Jared Jones.
Speaking of damage, there's a great crop of young power hitters in the SEC this year. Dakota Jordan, obviously, right there among them. Is there a guy you like the best out of this group? You got about 1 minute left here with us, Kendall. Jordan, Condon, all those guys. Who's the guy you like the best?
Man, you got to go with Condon, right? I mean, his numbers are just stupid. I mean, you're talking about a guy hitting around 500. I want to say he's right above or right at 30 RBIs already, and he's in double-digit home runs already. I mean, what he's done is just absolutely ridiculous. That's hard to do. And let's not forget, Scott Strickland redshirted this guy. So, yeah, bad decision.
Kendall, thank you so much for your time, as always.